Hi, this is Bob Sorrentino from Italian Roots in Genealogy, and I am just thrilled today to have Judy Wilkins-Smith. She's a world-renowned family patterns and systematic work in constellations expert, author, and motivational speaker. And we're going to talk about emotional DNA today. So welcome, Judy. Thank you so much for being here.
Hi, Bob. It's lovely to be with you.
So, as we were speaking a little bit earlier, most of us, when we think of DNA, we think of, physical characteristics, eye color, hair color, going bald like me. So what exactly is emotional DNA?
So, Bob, your emotional DNA is your pattern of thoughts, feelings, actions, inactions, all of that good stuff that you inherit and that comes cycling all the way down to you.
Yeah, and that's what I found so fascinating when I was, reading up on what you do, because you even tie it not just to that, but also money patterns too, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Part of your emotional DNA is all of the subsections like relationship DNA, money DNA, leadership DNA, career DNA. You'll find it all tied in there. So everything everything clicks together, everything loops together. And the reason those patterns cycle down are because they're waiting for you to do something with them.
And I'm a firm believer in that leaders are born and not made. And the reason I say that, I spent 45 years in the business world, and I fancy myself as a good leader, but I didn't get it from books. It just was inherent in what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do that. And I don't know, maybe it has something to do with because I was able to trace my ancestors back 1,000 years, and then there was some real
Wow.
born leaders in there. So, how do you tie that together? Well, let me ask you this: do you agree with me that leaders are born, not made?
I would have probably, before I started doing this work, I would say we all have it with us, and it depends on what's triggered and how. So, is there an event that suddenly triggers something and you work towards that? So, I would say it's a combination because they absolutely can grow into. Um, what you're talking about almost is I think we're actually in agreement. You traced your lineage back. You knew that leadership existed there and you kind of plugged into that. But for a lot of people, leadership can also happen where they look at it and say, there are no leaders. Somebody's got to do something. And they start to change the emotional DNA. So when they start to change the emotional DNA, then you see a leader actually growing into, not necessarily born and raised, but with those traits and epigenetically something is kicked in and that marker has been switched on.
So it's there, but you have to trigger it, and you kind of have to want it and accept it.
Absolutely. It's all about choice. And I love that you used the word want because want is inherent to everything expanding. We keep saying to people, want less, want less, no, want more, but then go and get it. And get it in a way that makes you happy and expand society around you, because that's the secret ingredient. That's how we start growth in the world. That's how we do these incredible things. That's how we had Apple and Starbucks and Disney, and that's how that happened. They had a passion, and they made the passion bigger than any place that they were stuck. If you look at Walt Disney, he did not come from leadership stock, and yet, he isn't the original entrepreneur. His father is. He just took it a step further.
Right, right. Yeah, no, I see what you mean. And so, how about traits like, um, you know, gambling or drinking or drug use? Is that something that is in all of us and it's switched on by an event, or is it just inherent in the DNA somewhere?
It's something that's often switched on by an event. In the case of addiction, you may see that there's a victim perpetrator dynamic in the family, and it's trying to express through I, the perpetrator, injure myself, the victim. So that's one. Gambling, you will often find that there's a pattern of loss or gambling further back in the family. Grandfather bet the whole farm and lost it all. Now we're trying to recover it. Drinking is an interesting one because there are a number of dynamics and patterns associated with it. But one of the most prevalent ones is, I drink to die to what I cannot look at in front of me.
Mm, mm. And I found out recently that my great grandfather did exactly what you said. He gambled away. They owned a lot of property, and he gambled away his portion. He even went as far as he sold the family crypt
Ooh,
in Italy.
he really went for it. So then you would also want to know, and you particularly would have access to this, beyond your great grandfather. If you go further back, did somebody perhaps make money off the backs of someone else or do something unscrupulous? Because systems have a very interesting pattern. If something is made in a way that doesn't balance in the system, a later generation member will lose it all.
Mm.
So you want to have a look at that and really see, was there something like that that happened? Or did it begin with your great grandfather? In which case, you'll find that in somebody there's going to be a drive to build a fortune. And it's only when they look back that they'll see why that drive exists, because a fortune was lost.
Well, so I'll tell you an interesting story about that. When we were visiting one of the homes in Massa di Soma in Italy, the ancestral home of my third, I guess third and fourth great grandfather, and I'm not sure which one it was. I think it was the third. He was the local count, lord, whatever, and he they showed me a window, and they said, "You see that window up there?" And I said, "Yeah." And they said, "Well, your great great grandfather, great grandfather used to kill a pig on his birthday and barbecue it and serve it to the peasants and get them drunk on wine and throw coins out the window to watch them fight over it. And
Okay,
his son is the one that gambled away all this stuff." I think it was his son.
there you go. And you want to see, how did he make his fortune? Was it made in a way that disadvantaged someone else? Because if he did, it could very well be that this was the balance that came in. And it'll also then trigger a desire to go back to that money DNA that was there, but perhaps in a different way.
And so, what about somebody? Because there was another person that I interviewed, and he was an attorney. He never knew that his ancestors were attorneys, but when he found his research going back hundreds of years, his family, his ancestors were attorneys.
Yep. And so then it calls, right? And we don't always understand why. I said to you earlier on, I think before we even came on, you'll see those patterns that surface in careers and in all sorts of things. And so somebody goes, I'm really, really called to do that. Well, yes, it's the system that's calling you. It's the family system echo that's coming all the way down and going, we're attorneys, and all the way down to you. And suddenly you're an attorney and you're not too sure why, but it really, really spoke to you and resonated. That's why.
Yeah, and I feel that way about those of us who do the genealogy research, because almost to a person, everybody says the same thing. I feel like I have to do this. I feel like somebody's telling me to do this. I feel like my ancestors want to be found.
Yeah, so here's an interesting piece that with genealogy, what you're doing is you're looking at where you belong. The work that I do shows you why and how that matters. It looks at the events as well as the people. And it's really, really important, because genealogy is the first step. But this work, the interactive genealogy, is the second and third step. It unlocks the reason that you're doing what you're doing. And it shows you that what you've got in genealogy is a system of clues. And they're telling you, go here, go there, do this, do that. They're actually showing you how you can become your fullest potential, literally, by what did and didn't happen in the family system. And so with genealogy, we're busy working at the moment to closely align with them, because we have so much more information.
Yeah, and I even said it in my book. I felt this. I always liked history, but I felt this need, and it's funny because within the family, uh, most of my cousins, could care less. They're just, oh, that's interesting, but why are you doing this again?
Yeah, well, what you've discovered that, and you don't know it yet, is, as I say, you have a whole system of clues waiting for you to decode them, which is why I called my book what I did. When you decode those clues, you're going to discover there's a very rich life, not only just beneath the surface, but it's propelling you to have a purpose. And that purpose is contained directly within your genealogy.
And so, does that explain why, um, brothers and sisters, they've grown up in the same household, same mother and father,
Yep.
same, economic status and all of that, but could be vastly, vastly different?
Yes, yes, because what you typically find is the eldest on either side, or on either gender, tend to take after mom and dad, so they take those pieces. Well, that those pieces have been eaten, so the next siblings will reach further back and further back and further back. Or you may have an event that is so significant in the family that it starts to send out the pattern that overpowers everything else. It governs that because it's an unresolved event. And until you bring it to light and you give it its place in its genealogy, it's going to keep expanding and repeating and echoing. And it'll come down to you to things like physical traits, illnesses, success. You'll find people who will literally go all the way there, and as they get to success, they U-turn. And when they
Hmm.
do that, or they crash, I go looking because somewhere in the family there was a crash or a U-turn, and you've picked it up as though it were your pattern, but it's not. It belongs further back, and it's expressing through you in an attempt to draw your attention to what's off in the system.
And so they just thought this. I have to ask this question. Uh, Teenage girls,
Yes.
why at 14 did they just go completely?
Well, some of them do and some of them don't. But don't forget, there's probably, in addition to hormones and all of the good stuff that medicine will explain, you probably got a couple of meta patterns sitting there going, well, that's what we do. And it's when you start to look at it, it's remarkable to see how closely but unconsciously we follow the patterns of those who came before us, or the meta patterns that have been set up. I'll give you a gentleman who came to see me, and he said to me, I need help. Um, my business dropped dead at the age of 41 and I can't revive it. Well, that's an odd thing to say about a business, but okay. So I said to him, okay, so tell me about your dad. Tell me about your grandfather. He said, oh, my dad dropped dead at 41, had a sudden heart attack. There was nothing they could do. So already we've got the pattern showing. So he said, oh, and you know what? My uncle was killed for money when he was 41. And my grandfather was doing great. And there was an accident and he dropped at the age of 41 and his business has died. And he went, I got it. So there it's been sitting, echoing. And I said to him, so you didn't need to die, but you killed the business instead, or the business died
Mhm.
to take care of that. And this is what happens. They keep playing and they keep saying to us, look, look, and we miss it.
And so how does, because I know you talk a lot about, finances and money and how that pattern evolves also. And it's a similar kind of thing then, yeah?
It's very similar. First of all, we've got a meta pattern around money. So the meta pattern around money is it's bad, it's evil, it's greedy, it's wrong, it's an or. You can have love or money, you can have greatness or money, but you can't have both. And that's an inaccurate but highly prevalent systemic sentence. And a systemic sentence means those things that we tell ourselves all the time. And so we've come to believe that that's true. It's not true. Money is an and. It's also not a commodity, it's a relationship, and it will show up for you the way that you show up for it. So if in your family, and I often have this, people come to me and they say, you know what, I want to be wealthy. And I say, okay, talk to me about wealth. What do you think about money? Oh, people mostly lie and cheat and steal to get it. And I say, oh, so you want to become a liar, a cheat, and a thief? And they go, no. So why do you think you're going to be different? If you have that mindset, how can you have any other outcome? So it's about looking at your thoughts, feelings, and actions around it, and then just tweaking it. One new thought, one new feeling, one new action at a time. But you've got to do it in a way that the brain tells the body a story that the body believes, because that's what will manifest or not. If your body's not buying it, if you say, I'm going to be a millionaire, and your heart's going, yeah, right, and your gut's going, ha, 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 it's not going to happen. But when you get really intentional and you go, you know what, I could do this. I know I could do this. I'm going to be a millionaire. Now you've opened the door, your heart's open, your creative brain is switched on, your gut's becoming the inner compass, and now you're going to focus on a very different set of patterns. So instead of reliving ancient history, you're now fully present, and your future is no longer predictable. You've just changed it. And your DNA, by the way, your emotional DNA.
So you can change your emotional DNA.
Oh, that's the whole point of emotional DNAs. When I said to you in genealogy, you've got the system of clues. Emotional DNA is telling you what to do with the clues. You absolutely want to change it and write the chapter that only you can write and take it to the next level. That's what the family system is waiting for.
So is that almost the same as, you're walking someplace and it's dark, and you say, well, I could go this way or that way. This way shorter, but it's probably not safe. But you do it anyway. So your brain is telling you this isn't the right thing.
Right.
But you do it anyway.
Actually, your brain's going, I could go this way, and your heart's going, this is not good.
Mm-hmm.
And your gut's going, ugh. And when those three aren't aligned, one of them is telling you, no, you're not aligned. We can't do this. But you'll have a time where you'll say, I want to do this. This is exciting. This is cool. And you go for it. And your gut is aligned and your heart's open and the brain is switched on. That's when you're in a state of coherence, and that's when you will move.
Yeah. And so another question that comes up often, because I don't believe in coincidences, especially in genealogy. There's so many stories where somebody's in the street in Italy, and somebody walks up to them and says, "Who are you?" And they say who it is, and they say, I know that family," or "I'm your family," or is that an accident or?
No, no, it's not. No. Once we're even slightly open to that, what we think are coincidences in the universe are clues that have been lining up for you for ages. They're waiting for you to notice. They've been there. In fact, if you listen to your language, if you listen to the way you speak, you're tattling on your system all day long. If you look at the actions you take, you're taking systemic actions. So again, the exciting part of this is that emotional DNA is waiting for you to use it, because that's what your physical DNA and your genealogy is all about. It's the magic genie and it's the Pandora's box. When you open that, you're going to find that you have a much bigger life than you anticipated, with a lot more possibilities, because you'll see where your family's been limited, what shut them down, what language shut them down, what events shut them down, and what you need to do to open it back up again.
Yeah. And so, my kids are grown now, but how does a parent get this across to a 12, 13, 14-year-old person that they need to be themselves, that they shouldn't follow what the others are doing? The old saying is, if your friend was going to jump off the bridge, would you jump too?
Beautifully put, because here's how you do it with a 12, 13-year-old. You take a chess set, and especially for you in genealogy, you take a chess set and you put down great-grandfather. So the chess set's lovely because a chess board, in effect, gives you your generations, right?
Mhm.
You go down the lines. So you take a chess set, you go further back, you say, here's what happened to great-great-grandfather. And he lost all the money. And that meant that there was language that came in that said, a fool and his money are soon parted, or waste not, want not, or earn a penny, save a penny, earn a penny, all of those languages. And you show them. And then you say to them, and then there was grandfather, and he really believed that, so it kept him pretty stuck. But he was a little bit safer. He didn't lose things. Then we get to dad, and you say, now look at your grandpa, my dad. Um, he started to be interested in making money, but he kept listening to all of those old sentences where he was told, don't be foolish, don't be stupid. And so he invested a little bit, but not too much. And then there's me. I've learned that if I can invest and if I work with a smart financial advisor, I can build it up. And so now we have what we have. So it's going to be interesting. What are you going to add to that? Are you going to be the one that grows the wealth? What do you want to do about money? How does it feel to you? And you can have that conversation and then say to them, do you understand that you, as the latest generation, are the one who gets to add the next chapter? That's your adventure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and if you, like you said, if you are doing genealogy, it's easier because you know where everybody came from, and I think that's part of the whole reason why some of us do it, to understand why are we who we are.
Yes, yes, yes. And that, again, in the book explains it very, very clearly. We're not just governed by today's the day. There are very heavy strands and patterns that echo all the way through, and they're trying very hard to speak to us. Um, you'll know this TV show, Who Do You Think You Are?
Yes, 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 yes.
Brooke Shields wants to.
I don't think I saw that one.
Okay, so she wanted to speak French, and everybody thought she was pretentious. But she was really, really called to it. And it traces directly back to Louis XIV.
Mm-hmm.
It's not an accident. It's that echo and that conversation, the multi-generational patterns that are echoing through all the way to you. And it's speaking a language that we're not listening to. But if we did, and we paid attention, we would find out where we're stuck, why we're stuck, and where our purpose is and our calling is, and we would be very easily on that path.
So how, I'm sure it's more complicated than you can answer right now, but how do you tune into that? How does one
Okay,
tune into that?
it's not so complicated. Look, the work that I do at a live event is very different, but when people ask me, it's not that complicated. If you were to sit down and write down all of your thoughts about money, and then all of your feelings about money without censoring it, and then all of your actions around money, you're going to start seeing that there's a pattern. Maybe there are hot words or very elevated feelings or specific actions. And then you ask yourself, when did I first start noticing money? And what was happening for me at the time? What did I make that mean about me? What did I make it mean about others? Is there anyone else in the family who has a similar pattern, or who has a pattern that may have set my pattern off? And then you look at that and you'll be off to the races. This is a genealogy paradise.
Right, right. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. My wife tells me all the time, especially when I found out some of the ancestors. So that's where you get that from.
And she's right. You want to listen to her when she's saying that, because she's exactly spot on. But what she's also saying to you is, pay attention. What can you do with that? It's not just the irritating bit that she's saying is, so how could you do that differently? But when you know where that came from, there's a lot that you could do with it. If you watching genealogy, you watch people on these TV shows, and they're really moved by their genealogy, because it's not just a hear thing, it's a connection. And they know that connection means something. And in this work, emotional DNA, it shows you this is what it means. This is what your purpose is. Go, run, do it.
So why do some people have that connection and others just don't, or they're
It's
connected to something else?
yeah, it's simply because we haven't been taught to see it. And that's the beauty of, again, of a live event. When I show people their patterns at a live event, we take live representatives for every member in the family that's part of what we're looking at. And suddenly the person can see in front of them this interactive genealogy image. Now they're seeing the pattern of money. They're seeing it, they're hearing it, they're touching it, they're feeling it. And what happens is the limitations, they suddenly see where those come from, and they can hand it back with acknowledgement, and they see what they can do with it. And you'll see the brain starts to rewire and the body starts to rewire in the moment, because they're having this embodied experience of their family system. So what we're doing is we're literally making the invisible visible and the unconscious conscious, and that hasn't been done before. So people are quite startled when they see it the first time, and when it hits them so profoundly and they feel it keenly. And this is everybody. This is an everyday person walking into an event. Suddenly they're going, whoa, this is who I am. This is what I'm connected to. This is what's possible. It has a huge impact on them.
Right. And I know you do this for some large corporations, right? Where I guess
I
you
do.
bring it, do you do it for the regulatory management team, or just, how's that work?
Well, what we do is we have, so there are a number of things. I do a lot of executive systemic coaching. So when I'm working with an executive, I do a deep dive into their career and a deep dive into their family system, because who you are as a leader began with how you were at home. And so you're either reacting to or in collusion with the family pattern. But then I also get called in if they're stuck. So if they have an issue that they cannot figure out, they'll call me in. And what I do is I set up the issue in 3D. Either we use pieces of paper or we use the live representatives. And again, now they can suddenly see, oh, wait a minute, this team is disengaged, this team is engaged, here's the obstacle over here. We keep using this language, which is shutting everybody down, because you start to connect into the system. And now they see the relationships between the different parts of the system as well. And so the connections are being switched on and rearranged, and they're in 3D, they're virtually testing solutions. And so that's what I do in large companies.
And it just came out the other day. I wrote a book about my career in banking, and I have my 60-second MBA where I tell you everything you need to know in, in 10 steps that I learned, right? But I learned more from the bad managers than I did from the good ones.
You would have, because they were exhibiting all of the different patterns and things that you could learn from. The unfortunate thing is we often learn that way, but what we don't do is we don't look at the really, really good ones and say, how do I do that? And how do I even surpass that? Because we've been taught, got to be humble, got to be small, don't shake the trees and the branches, be careful. So we learn from the bad ones and go, oh, don't do that. But we don't always learn from the good ones and go, do that, do that, do that.
And it's funny that you say that, because looking back on my career, I was bolder as a young guy than I was older, because there was more risk. I had a wife, then we had the family, and I'll tell you my first 6 months at Chemical Bank, Mr. Martin was he was just a fabulous manager. He's now 96 years old, a wonderful man.
Wow.
But I was put in a place where they had gotten a really bad audit. I turned it around. I got a really good audit. I was 22, I think. And my boss said, Mr. Martin wants to see you. Now I could call him John. Back then I had to call him Mr. Martin. And so we go in there, and he told me we went from a D audit to an A audit. That's wonderful. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. Da, 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 da. I said, thank you, but what's in it for me?
Oh,
We walked out of the office, and my boss smacked me in the back of the head and said, "You little shit, what's wrong with you?" And 2 weeks later, I got a 10% raise,
Now,
and that was what that stuck with me for my entire career.
I'm so glad you said that, because I went, oh, but here's what you did. You didn't back down. You actually looked at it and said, I did something and I want to go further. And you went, I want. And most people do not go, I want. We've been taught, don't do that. Play nice, be good, and maybe somebody will recognize you. That's not how it works. What you were doing that nobody recognized is you were actually advocating for your career. Your career is your child. And if you're not pushing that child and advocating for that child, it can't grow. So you did a very ballsy thing, and it paid off. And you were smart enough to pay attention to it and keep repeating it.
Yeah. Well, I learned, the message I took away from that was, I'm not going to make people ask. I'm gonna recognize somebody, and part of the 60-second MBA is, uh, give credit to your team when things go well, and take the heat when things go bad.
Okay, so I'm going to challenge you the teeniest bit on the heat. Yes, and you didn't go all the way down, which is take one for the team. I had a person who told me, I take one for the team, and I said to him, and then you've just destroyed your team. And he said, what? I said, if you cannot sit with your team through the goods and through the bads and teach them to debrief what happened in the bad, you just killed them. Yay, you look like a hero for 5 minutes, you're gone, and they're moving on to the next one. They didn't learn. So yes, cheer them on when they're really doing well. And when they're not, stop and look at what happened, and then look at what's possible.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. No, I see what you're saying. That's a good point. I may have to put a 11 in.
Make 11.
Go for 11.
I have a theory about that. The 10 commandments. I'm quite convinced that there are 20 commandments, by the way, because the first 10 are all the things you shouldn't do, but nobody's given us all the other 10 that you should do.
Yes, that's a good point. That's a great point. Well, Judy, thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. So if anybody wants to contact you or buy the book or hire you for an event, how do they do that?
If they want to contact me, they go to Judy Wilkins-Smith.com. The book is really all over the place at this point. Barnes & Noble, Amazon, you name it, it's there. It's been featured in Psychology Today. It's a Goodreads must read. So it's in 7 languages now, by the way, eight languages. So it's being well enjoyed. And for live events, if they go to my website, they'll find me. And as is what I'm doing, Money DNA.
Oh, great. That's perfect. That's perfect. Well, thank you again. I really, really appreciate it.
Thank you. This was lovely. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.